everybody. My name is Kira James, and I'm a product marketing manager with Microsoft, and I work on our Microsoft Teams FirstLine Worker initiatives. A pleasure to have you all here today, and I'm super excited to share how we're evolving Teams to meet the needs of everybody. Today, you'll see me and hear from me. For a majority of this presentation, though, we'll have my colleague, Rich Halbert, give you a live demo on what these new capabilities look like for our FirstLine workers. And so when I think about the ways in which the world works today, there's so much and so many people that are part of that. And so Microsoft is really, really invested in making sure that everyone from the board line down to the first line are equipped and enabled with technology to make their jobs easier. A first-line worker is someone who works in a service or task-oriented role, typically shift-based. And for example, when you go into a clothing retailer, that person or that sales associate is what I would classify as a first-line worker. Same thing in a manufacturing plant or in a factory, that laborer or person on the floor. And so when thinking about this definition, first-line workers are the first with your customers, the first with your products and operations, and the first to represent your company's brand. And I actually have been a first-line worker, and I know many of us have, but more recently, and I'm from New York, and in true New York form, I worked 2 jobs. I was saving up money to get my master's, and so I worked 9 to 5 in the beginning of my day, and in the evening, I worked a second job at a large beauty retailer. And when I think about this environment, it's extremely dynamic. My role was based on what was assigned to me for that day. And many times when it came to other tasks like schedule management and understanding what was relevant to me, it was a bit cumbersome. And so the challenges for this audience are plentiful in many ways. Often they feel disconnected from the team and company and the mission. Many times they're often behind on training and resources, and they're using outdated and obsolete technology. And so when we think about this category of people that are helping to power your business and drive your business forward, we thought it's super important that they too have technology to help you all. And so the way we think about this is your first line really does drive your bottom line. They are integral to the way in which people see a representation of your company. Hence, some statistics around why it's super important to empower this group of individuals. And so 81% of executives agree that sharing information with first-line workers is integral to moving the needle. But on the other hand of that is that 34% are actually doing it. 82% see higher job satisfaction when first-line workers are given the technology and the tools to be productive. And 33% see higher customer satisfaction. All that to bubble up and show that companies that are really investing in their first-line workers are performing much better than those that are not. Enter Microsoft Teams for communication, collaboration, and customization and extensibility, on top of being wrapped up in enterprise-level security. As you all are very familiar with Teams, there are 4 core promises. Teams enables people to communicate and collaborate across a method of different apps and devices through chats, meetings, and calls. You also have this grand opportunity to collaborate within the Office 365 product suite with Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and what have you. And then lastly, with access to an app store and thinking about your line of business apps, those can be brought into our Teams ecosystem. And of course, packaged with a bow when we think about the enterprise level security that Microsoft provides. And so thinking about Teams for information workers, those that are knowledge and content driven, and we also see that there's a huge opportunity to equip first-line workers, hence this video that I'll show you quickly.
New discoveries are made. New milestones are reached. And businesses thrive when people are empowered to achieve more. All workers can do the incredible with Microsoft Teams. But there's one group on the first line. They're the first to see the product take shape.
Having these tools makes it so simple to focus more time into our customers'
The first with an opportunity to address an issue.
Our employees that are on the first line, they're the lifeblood of our company.
The first touch with customers.
Fruit of the Loom's been in business 160 years. You don't do that by not innovating.
And now, new features and teams empowers first-line workers to work as a team and achieve even more. They can manage their day, be more efficient, and find the right person to get the job done. Now, all workers are empowered by the Hub for Teamwork. Microsoft Teams.
And so with that, I know you saw little sneak peeks of what this product experience entails, and so I'm going to invite my colleague Rich on stage to give you a really great demo on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. Good morning, everyone. So I, too, was a first-line worker working for a major burger chain. And my kids will never forget the story I told them of my first promotion. True story. Working in high school, flipping burgers. I finally got the promo, and they made me the fry guy. And I thought I died and went to heaven. So this fry guy was where it's at. So what we're going to do, we're going to walk through the product. I'm going to, for those of you who've been, it's Thursday, okay? It's been a long week. We got to get a little crazy here. We're going to try and go a little deeper, go into some areas that across the demos we've done at theater sessions or other sessions we may have not had a chance to get into. And we'll leave time for questions, but if you have questions in the middle of this, jump in, I don't care. Like, I want you all to leave here feeling like you got what you needed, and that's what we're here for. But in the meantime, I'll just walk you through the product so you get a sense of what is happening with Teams and how we're extending it to the first line. So we'll start with a familiar view of Teams and adding in the Shifts application. So when we talk about adding these capabilities, Shifts is really at the foundation of the new features that are coming into Teams. When you are a worker, an hourly worker, mobile worker in all of the various industries we work in, whether it's retail, hospitality, travel, healthcare, the shift is such an important part of your life and existence with that company. So knowing when to work, where you need to work, what you need to do, it's very, very foundational. And the exciting thing is, as we add this capability into Teams all up, it's great for first-line workers, for sure, but it's great for a lot of information workers as well. I mean, I talk to companies all the time about their customer service organization, field service organization, doctors, nurses, students, users who are still power technology users, maybe deep in using the whole suite of Office 365, but then they work on shifts, and all of a sudden the fact that they work on this shift is so fundamental to their job life. And what's exciting is as we add this into Teams, it's usable for any team on Teams. So just to get you familiar within the Shifts app, which right now is sitting down here until we release, in a few weeks, you'll be able to go to your Teams, go into the App Store, search for Shifts, and add this to your experience and try it out for yourself. And I'm going to familiarize you first with the web experience and the desktop sort of side of things so that you can see how a team kind of gets created and you get the schedule in there. And then we'll go to mobile and look at those features as well. So you'll see here, I typically use a retail example because everyone shops, so they understand retail. You'll see this team is divided up into different groups like sales, customer service, security. And then we have different shift types. So opening shifts, closing shifts, swing shifts. And then we use time and color. Like, you typically want something very visual so you can quickly see what's going on within the schedule. We have things like here, I've got a note, set up next employee all hands in this shift. That's what we call a shift note. So that's something very specific to that person, and they see that when they're within the mobile app. And then we also have these day notes up at the top to kind of paint the picture for all employees who are going to be working that day. In this case, they're sort of giving the forecasted sales and traffic goals, as well as maybe some specific tasks or things that need to get done in the store that day. And so it's just a nice way to be able to communicate to everyone on the team. We also have a fairly new feature called Open Shifts. Now, Open Shifts is a big trend because people want more and more flexibility, and there's a push to have more and more employee-driven scheduling. So in this case, you have a certain role. Let's look at one, say, let's go down to sales associates. We have 2 open slots from 12 to 9, closing shift for sales associates, and no one has been scheduled yet that day. Now you can see here, I can see that Miriam has given me her availability and says that she's unavailable. And then I kind of look at the other people, Enrico and Deborah, and say, okay, how are they doing for schedule? Now this is today, so this would be kind of tough to give them a shift for later today, but we'll go with it. So I can come down and say, oh, I'll assign that now to Henrietta. So now you see that these 2 open shifts went down to 1. Now that 1 is also on the mobile app. So if I go in, I'm looking on the app and I go look for open shifts, if I'm an employee and I see that that works with my schedule, I can go pick that shift up. I have customers who actually only create schedules with open shifts, and they allow the employees to just go grab whatever shifts that they want, and they basically create the schedule themselves. So the manager looks at like what capacity and what roles they need when, they create all these open shifts, and then the employees come in. So some will sort of refer that as to like the Uber model of scheduling, and trying to really map the schedule to the employees' desires. Everyone wants flexibility these days. So you can see a week here. Typically, if I watch someone who's building out a schedule, it's a 20, 30-minute process for a team of 30, 40 people. I mean, it goes very, very quickly. It's very Excel-like in its feel. So if I copy a shift like this one, and I'm going to really be harsh on Grady, he's going to work every day. I can Control-C, pick a range, Control-V, and make it so he's working every day. That'd be tough. So it has a very familiar feel in the way that the experience is. And then you'll notice that, like, as I make a change, let's see if there's any on here, like down here, when I added this shift to Henrietta, there's a little asterisk here. That means it has not been shared out. So I'm sort of editing in an edit mode, and I make all my changes, and then I publish that out. So I go up here and say, share that change with the team, and then I can see on the schedule where there's changes that need to be pushed out. And I can say, okay, this one I want the entire team to know about, or maybe it was just impacting one person, so I'm just going to send it out to those who were impacted. Then they will get a notification that that change was made. In addition to the week view, I can pop out to a month view, and we're so right at the end of the month, we'll go forward to October. And you can see that I've published the schedule out to October 6th here. One of the features that we've done that just kind of make the lives of the managers and schedulers easier is this ability to copy the schedule. And what happens here is I can carry forward from the previous week into the next week, or I can actually go in, because sometimes customers will have like a 4-week rotation. So going into week 5, they're going to repeat week 1. So they can go back and take week 1 and then make that the 5th week schedule, which is pretty powerful. Now, you can decide what you include in that, and I typically turn off shift notes or time off because they don't typically carry forward. And then I just hit copy, and it brings over everything from last week into the schedule. Again, all this happens in draft mode, and then I can go in and tweak that schedule. Now, in most cases, the schedule's relatively stable, and so, this may be an 80% correct answer for this week. And then I go in and say, okay, I know Adele can't work that day, so I'm going to take that shift away, or, I need someone to cover this, Control-C, Control-V. I can go in and make those changes. And then, like I showed before, In this case, because it's everyone's schedule, I push that out to the entire team, and the schedule's now live. So making that, we're always about taking as much friction out as possible for the manager and the employee especially. Now, because we are, let me see what else I'm going to go. Because we're teams, all of our communications are also here on the desktop. So for a manager, if they have a shared device, if they have a tablet, they have their PC at their office, it's nice that they can do all their communication right from Teams wherever they are. And that's one of the big flexibilities of the whole product. I'm going to go into some more of the communications features when we get into the mobile experience here shortly. And then you also have the ability to communicate across the entire team. And you'll see things here when you have this everyone connected. It tends to be the realm of, I need help right away, and I don't know who can help me, or just community-based, just kind of connecting with each other. Are we going to go see a movie? Does anyone want to go to dinner after work and things like that? So having this sort of richness of the team's communication experience really helps connect the team. So that is that. Let me switch to mobile here. Okay, good. So now we have the mobile experience. And when we, part of moving this into Teams is we have a lot of users who were using Staff Hub before. And as we announced on Monday, we're moving all that capability into Teams. When we think about that capability, there's two major experiences that we're bringing forward. And this is the first one, what we call Home. In Staff Hub, we called it Now, if you're familiar with that. And Home is a very important sort of surface and experience within the first-line workers' use of the app and technology. And the idea behind Home is to be this contextualized experience where everything that they need is in one place when they come into the application. So when you open the app, this is the experience you come to. Home is something that we envision being a core part of Microsoft Teams All Up and for all users. But initially, it's going to start as just a first-line worker experience. We're doing a lot of engineering around this experience to make it more extensible, pluggable, more customizable for you. But we get a lot of the same feedback on the information worker side that there's a lot going on in Teams that I want a way for you to filter it out for me so that the most important things come into the experience at once. Because in this case, we're really trying to bridge these sort of siloed experiences that many of these workers have, from scheduling, could be some task management, could be all sorts of different communications, whether it's corporate communications coming down, or one-to-one, one-to-many chats, or managers sending things to the team. And so we want to bring all this together into one experience. And so like you can see here that I have actually clocked in. So time and attendance is a feature that we added shortly after scheduling because they're very connected. So the scheduling says what should happen, and the time and attendance tells you what actually happened. And so here I'm clocked in. I could say that now that we're in demo mode, we will go on a break. And this is an optional feature that you can turn on in your settings. And you can also use geolocation if you would like here as well. So you set a location for the office, the hotel, whatever business you're in, and then it uses the GPS off the phone to let you know if that person was on site when they clocked in. The other thing is, so I see again those day notes from the web view that I showed you and my schedule today. And so I can go into that schedule and you'll see that within my shift I have training set up from 12 to 1. So these are what we call activities. These are sort of sub-shifts or things that happen inside the shift itself. So maybe you're working in a certain location in the morning, and then you're going to have lunch, and then you're going to work somewhere else in the afternoon. This is a way to give higher fidelity to the schedule within the shift. I can also see in the upper right here, we have a view of everyone who's working that day. Now, from the first line workers' perspective, this is one of the most popular features. They love knowing who's going to be at work when they get there. So this becomes, nice again to connect all the people working. And I use examples like if you're all connected and you're in a store and it's a big store and some customer stops you and asks a question, being able to go in, see who's working, and in an example, we'll pick Nestor, who's working in customer service. I can go right into a chat experience with Nestor, and be like, you there? And, oh, sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay. There we go. And, customer has a question. And so, without having to leave the customer, trying to get an answer, being connected, knowing what's going on, who's in what role, who's on shift right now, very valuable, information for the operational flow, of the company. The other thing we think is very critical with the knowledge of the schedule is tuning the communications to those working right now. Typically about in a retail setting, about a third of the employees are on shift at any given time, probably 25 to 30%. So if you've got 20 people working in the store, you've got 40 people who aren't. And so you don't want to be having a lot of communications that are going to all 60 because 40 people don't really care what's happening in the store right now. But the 20 who are, they're very connected and they have to deal with everything that's happening. So having them all connected very, very simply is really important. And so I can go right into here, and go right into everyone who's working right now, and I use the clean spill on aisle 5. So things that are really important that need to happen in a timely way, or I just need to let everyone know, or the back door is not closing and it's a security risk, or someone odd walks in the front door, and so everyone should be aware. These types of things and connecting people who are all in the store at one time is really, really important. And we're going to give you that capability to reach these people. You can also think of, in a larger setting, if a store gets swamped with customers and you have a lot of people on break, again, knowing about their schedule and being able to message just those on break to say, hey, we need some help up front. Can you come out off break and help us out? Those kind of connections are really, really crucial, and to make it more efficient to operate, in this case, the store. So we'll go into shifts from the worker's point of view. And you can see here my schedule. And we talked about open shifts on the web, and you can see here where I have a conflict, and then there's a few shifts that don't have a conflict, where I can go in and say, say I don't mind working on this Thursday, and then I can go request that shift. And in all of our request flows, we have this sort of mini workflow in the background, and in this case, it's nice and easy. It helps with demos. Being the manager, I can approve my own shift changes, and so I come in, I say, yeah, you can have that shift. And now when I go back on October 11th, I'm working from 12 to 9. The same happens with swapping a shift. So if I'm on, say, October 2nd, Tuesday, and I go, oh, that's right, I have a doctor's appointment that morning, I can come in and swap my shift. So the nice thing about this is the team becomes all connected, and I go to the 2nd, and I can see who's working that day, and I find Adele, who's my closing manager that day, and I let her know, hey, I've got a doctor's appointment, and I need to swap the shift. So without knowing Adele's phone number, email, how to contact her, I can go in, see that this works with my schedule, and make that request. And so I send that off, and like before with the OpenShift, we have this workflow. Now in this case, we need Adele to say, hey, I can cover that, that's fine. And if she says yes, then it goes to the manager for approval, and it becomes live on the schedule. This particular scenario, swapping a shift, is the most common reason when I'm talking to customers of why their employees move to consumer applications and outside of IT to connect with each other and talk about work, all outside of the company. So this is like your WhatsApp, Messenger, any of the consumer tools, Snapchat, whatever they want to use to kind of connect. So because for these shift workers, that is a very primary fear in their lives when they have to swap a shift. And these are problems that they have to solve. I always use my son is sick at dinner and I can't work tomorrow and he's not going to go to school tomorrow. Between 8 p.m. and midnight, I got to solve that problem. And so what people do is they say, well, let's just create this group and then I'll flip it out to you guys and see who can cover, before I have to even call the manager, because I don't want to call the manager because he or she's going to get mad at me. And so they just get in this stressful situation. By connecting people and giving them all the tools that they need to go solve that problem, it takes the stress down and the reliance that they need on these consumer tools, down, which is great to see. One other thing I showed, which was on the web view, was availability. And so this is a way for employees to communicate when they can work. It's what I would call soft information in the sense that it's only to inform the manager. It's not like an enforced thing. So maybe Sunday we're desperate, and even though this person's unavailable, I may say, hey, can you take this shift? But it has become an important element to get the communication between managers and employees. And then I can also see my timesheet for my clock in and clock outs as well. And we are working on timesheet approval to help feed into the payroll flow as well. So now let's do this, and we're gonna stress test my hotspot here, which seems to be working. So now what we have is on the right is one of my cashiers, Alex, and I want to just sort of talk about a few of the communications features. So Alex is talking to Ben. And in this case, just to save us time, I said to Alex, hey, when you get a chance, I need you to power cycle your point of sale machine. And he's like, okay, sounds good, but a lot of customers right now, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Just let me know. And so now we get into this, and he comes on and says, I'm ready to do this. And so one feature that's coming very, very soon within Teams is now emoticons on a message. So not just liking the message, which is what we have today, but I can come up and say, fantastic, and give that emoticon view. What we see in the first line space probably most acutely is that they're used to consumer tools. So we think it's really imperative for us to get to parity with all of the consumerish, interactions with the chats. And so this is one example of that I wanted to share. And so I may come in and say, okay, great. Well, then he comes and says, I don't get it. And then I'll show you another feature, which is that we just added. And I will go to here. And so this is a view of his point of sale machine. And now we have image annotation. So maybe I say, press here. Oops. move that over. Then maybe I come in and say arrow. And so again, the consumer-based experience, very, very important. Now, he may say, you know, he's still working. This is a complex request to him. And so now if he's still not getting it, what I love about having this natively within Teams is that if we lose the ability to chat like this, all it takes for Ben to do is to hit the call in the upper right and now call me. And so again, no phone numbers, no complexity, no digging through contacts. I'm just going to make this call. And so now we're off IM because it's just too complicated to sit there and type this out. And so, you know, we're talking and he's still not getting it. He's had a rough day. Maybe he hasn't had his coffee yet. And then I say, okay, well, why don't you flip to video? And so again, seamlessly, without like really, you know, having to make this leap, they can go right to a video call, which is stressing my, hold on, there we go. And then I can have him flip his camera around and go right to, you know, okay, now the button in the upper right, press this, do that. So the medium from IM to phone to video and making that super seamless is such a powerful part of what Teams brings to these first-line workers. Because, you know, they're not paid for all the complexity. Their time is really important. You typically want things moving very fast, you know, on the first line. So having that connection we see as a really important part of that experience. So as much as scheduling is great to kind of define the work experience and who the team is and what's going on, the connectivity of teams at the first line level is very, very powerful. And some of these features that we've added really bring a richness and depth to it that they're very used to with a lot of the tools they use, you know, with their family and friends. And, you know, I'll sort of end by one last thing that's coming soon is sharing location. So, you know, because maybe it's a big store and even after we do the video call, if he still doesn't get it, I'm like, where are you? And he shares his location and I go find him. So again, these are a few of the chat features that are coming into Teams. This is obviously something that all team users can take advantage of. I just think they're really, really critical for the first line workers. The last thing I'm going to do is just, there's a lot of work we've done about parity between what happens in the mobile app and what happens on the web. So if I'll use Ben as an example, and let's say Ben comes and says, I want to take vacation, and he's going to take this week off, and he sends that off. That now when we come over, you know, as the manager, and I go into shifts, so because I could be in the office, I could be on the phone, I could be on site, you know, as the manager, or sometimes you'll have scheduling people, you know, they can be all over using different devices. You know, I can come in now, oops, and I'll see that he's made this time off request, and then I can just come on here and approve that right on the web. And by the same token, so that's like a super important ability, because we want you to have the flexibility to use whatever device you want. By the same token, if I go into a shift as the manager and I look at, you know, maybe someone tells me, oh, Friday, you know, Lynn needs to leave early. I can come right in and I can edit Lynn's shift and say, okay, she's got to leave at 6 that day, and maybe I'll change the color to yellow just so I know that it's something you know, different on the schedule. And so as a manager, we want them to be able to do things very, very quickly wherever they are. And that concludes the demo, and it's time for questions. Well, hopefully you saw a few things you may not have seen, even if you're pretty familiar with this. Sure, go ahead. Yeah, please come up to a mic. We got like, what, 4 of them? Cool. Go for it.
Yeah, hello, this is Joseph from Avanade, Germany, and I really love the solution approach. We are heavily looking for such a solution for our enterprise clients. But one important thing, especially if we think about enterprise environments, that there is always some kind of ERP system behind everything, which is doing the payroll or vacation and planning and all that kind of stuff, or sick leave. Is there somehow a connector or a connector besides this CSV export will give me the ability to connect this to my client's SAP system, for example?
So the answer to that is yes. We do have an API integration for schedule information in particular. That's sort of like 90% of the requests we've gotten on integration is around back to another workforce management solution and then coming into this experience. So in that case, this other system remains that system of record on the schedule, and then Teams is the front end that the users interact with on their mobile device. That will be moving into Graph API now that this is a part of Teams. And then being a part of Teams, you'll have that API data layer connectivity, but you also have Microsoft Flow or Bot Framework to do other things that you may want to do that may be more point data you need to go get, or a piece of data to make a decision on in a workflow and things like that. The other side, which we talk about because it's super critical about being that hub application, is all of the effort around our app store within Teams. And now that we have the ability to have the private app store, you can wall in the apps you want to expose to your workers. And if you take the major vendors, HCM, workforce management, ERP, they're under pressure just to integrate with Teams all up, just with the growth of Teams and the importance of Teams. So as that kind of work happens and they start exposing and publishing in their applications, you'll obviously take advantage of that as well, for certainly the major ones. But the API is important because it's a complex space.
Okay, and one more short question. So how do you position Kaisala in regards of first-line worker experience? So is it something totally different, no connection between both of them, or?
So Kaisala, there are some features that are similar, especially on the chat surface. And our positioning around Kaisala is targeted at 28 focused emerging markets. They have some great capabilities that they've built around low bandwidth usage. And the chat space is similar to Teams, but when we look at kind of the depth around the scheduling, the private app store, and the way that the LOBs can be attached in the experience, it gets fairly different. So, we kind of say lead with the customer and what the customer needs and what scenarios they're trying to light up to figure out what the best technology is for them. So it's very case by case or market by market.
And just one more point on that is that when you think about Kaisala versus Teams, Kaisala is for more unstructured environments. So when you think about the value chain, it's people that are working out in the farm or in the field or in very different environments than a Teams user would be, where it's kind of like in store. So I think, for example, if you're a large coffee retailer, those baristas in store would be using something like Teams. Those in the field that are actually yielding the coffee beans would be using something like Kaisala.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Rich. So this is Mike May. I'm with Kronos. So I'm
Hey, Mike.
later today. So he answered part of my question, was just about integration to scheduling applications. Can you talk a little bit about time and attendance too? What's going on there?
Yeah. Why don't you talk about
I know.
that? Just kidding.
Well, I know. I was just going to say, or you could come to 4:30 and learn about it.
Yeah, so first of all, shameless plug from Mike, has a session, it's at 4:30?
Yeah, in Orlando.
In the Orlando Ballroom.
Yeah.
Talking about Kronos integration to Teams specifically, and Kronos being the world's leader in workforce management, that's a good place to start to understand how it can work. We did, in fact, so time and attendance is critical time and attendance is its own, kind of its own full feature set. So this is an area where we have a few things underway. Now in the Kronos case with one of our joint customers, we did do the integration with the Kronos machines in the break room so that they can do their time attendance on the phone, and it sort of feeds down the same channel, so you take over payroll. And then we talked to other payroll vendors about bringing their apps into the App Store and doing that integration. We want to have this connection from the mobile and capture point being able to be mobile, because that's the best place to know what actually happened. Like, when did they get there? When did they take their breaks? That's sort of the reality of what happened in the day. So we capture that. And right now, it's just a flat file, CSV, Excel capture, and you can go process that and do what you want with it. I think as a vision, the more integrated the experience, the better. But I think it's very customer dependent how they want that experience. So many customers want the physical machine and go in the break room and tap your badge or biometric or log in or whatever you need to do. It's special when someone wants to just do this time attendance straight up, off the phone. There's something, the phone is getting more and more accepted as this biometric, like it's really you device. Face ID and these other things that are, becoming more accepted. But I don't want to get in the payroll business because it's complicated. It's just experience-wise, we'd like them to have as good an experience as possible.
And we don't want you to get in the payroll business. No, that's great. Thanks, Rich.
You bet.
Hey, Rich.
Hey, long time no see.
I know. So we work in healthcare, and so two questions. One, I saw an interesting feature about the indicating I'm on break.
Yep.
Does that reflect in the status of so somebody's trying to contact you during a break, does it automatically show that status? I didn't see it very explicitly, but I didn't.
So no, but truth be told, we are creating sort of let's think of it as an embellishment to presence.
Yeah.
They've kind of asked us for this super set of presences, like I'm on shift, on break, at lunch,
Okay.
things like that, where it'll become more a part of the team's experience. Now, whenever you touch something like that, you're in the core Teams world, and so that'll take some time. But we definitely have this intent, and then now that it's this sort of defined state, then you can go target that message to those.
Okay, and also in the frontline worker scenario, there's a lot of shared devices. Are you looking to build any special features for shared devices?
Yes, we are.
We'll talk.
This is probably okay to say, but we've got a lot of customers having this request, and our sort of belief system is we want this accessible. We want these services accessible to the worker whenever, at home or at work. So if they're restricted to not have their phones or not a BYOD environment, we want it to work in a shared device scenario. So there is engineering happening. It's probably a 90 to 95% Azure AD workload or work. But the general idea here is you will log into the device through Teams, and Teams will be your window into that device, and you will log into all of your, by doing that, log into all of your line of business applications in a single sign-on way. Use the device. All that's nice and easy. It's when you're done with your shift, it's hard, and that's the Azure AD work to just purge and reset so that you start fresh with the next user.
So you don't need Intune or an MDM solution, hopefully.
Yeah, it's kind of built into that. I mean, it's all connected the same way, manageable the same way. It just happens to be your device.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks, great stuff. Thank you for the presentation. When you first came into the demo and we were in that staff calendar view on the desktop, how did you get there? Did you install the staff app, and then did you actually hit that calendar module? Like, how did you arrive here?
Yeah, so if you go down to store, you'll be able to do this in a couple weeks. And so I just type Shifts, and there's my Shifts app. So then I install that. Now this is a native application, so then you'll be able to pin it into the nav, and it'll be, it'll be there like calling and meetings and other things in Teams.
Okay, thanks. And then it sounds like we just kind of touched this briefly, but in the states or the regulations where they're part-time workers, they should not be working after hours or beyond their schedule. Is that an Intune solution that we would look to prevent people from doing that?
So it can be. So you can use conditional access in that role, like just completely shut down
Okay, yeah.
Teams. I don't want you to do that. Your workers don't want you to do that. And so you're going to see a lot of things happening on the admin side of Teams, so that not only are you going to have that kind of app level control of what you turn on and off, but I want us to get deeper within the app to let you do certain things. And Shifts is always the one that's probably easiest to talk about, because to the worker, Shifts is the most important when they're not working. I mean, they don't need to know when they're working when they're there.
Right.
And so it's at night, it's on the weekend when they need that the most. So you want them to be able to have that ability. But if you wanted to turn chat off, or you wanted to turn other things off, we want you to be able to do that. So that they're not being bothered and they're not being asked to do things when they're not working. I mean, that's like the thing that no one wants. So we're going to give you more and more fine-grained control over that. So it's not just like an all or nothing app on off. And I want you to have that at role level too, because certain roles may have more capabilities off shift than others. And so there's a lot of work going to make it so you have that level of control. And that's where, if you saw this announcement about templates, is a really critical feature coming in Teams as we go first line, because your complexity goes up. So you're going to need to group, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees into certain buckets, so you can manage that, a small set of buckets and templates to then roll out. And that would be an example of one we like to,
All right,
have.
thank you.
Just quick plug, there's a session right after this, not specific to the first-line worker capabilities, but just how a large drugstore retailer in Germany is using Teams just on the front line. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, kind of speaking to some of the scenarios that Rich painted, you can just sit here. Just wanted to point that out. But next question.
Who was first? Go ahead.
Is there a way to automate the schedule creation based on their availability that the frontline workers have put in?
So, not really yet. So, you will start to see more in this realm from us. I mean, in a way I would say yes, because now that we're in Teams, everything's going to be like very graph API sort of thinking, and almost every piece of data is accessible. You could go write flows, and there's stuff you could do, okay? It's just that some things are very natural hops that we want to automate. So if for example, if someone says they're sick, well, I know they're sick, I know they're not going to work, I want to go and make that an open shift, and someone could take that open shift, and then I could set an auto approval to that open shift, and so the person who got sick and then someone filling them in, that whole thing just happened. Like, we have all the information to do that, so there's nothing hard there. We're just going to let the flows just go. So you're going to see pieces of that coming in just because it's right there. Like, we have all the information. I think when you get to like forecasting and like scheduling, like, call Kronos.
Okay, yeah, I was talking to him. So.
So, I mean, because it can be an incredibly complex world.
Yeah, I mean, our employees are student employees, so all their availability is based on when they're in class.
Yep.
So we need to be able to turn off that availability.
And that is one of my absolute favorite things I want to do now that this is in Teams. I mean, students, work study. I had someone yesterday in the booth along this line. It's like one of these, like, you just do it. Like, it's right there. It has everything you need. They're using Teams. Just start doing work study and you're golden. I mean, I love that scenario because it's something that just gets lit up by adding it into Teams.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to it then. Thank you.
Good day, how you going?
A couple of months ago, there was a free version of Teams that was announced for up to 300 users in certain scenarios, etc. How does that compare to the frontline version of Teams?
Yeah, these first-line worker capabilities won't be in the free version of Teams.
Okay, cool. Cheers. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, how's it going?
Hello.
I have a question about what about if a team is spread across multiple time zones, so they're not really in one building? You know, they're all working from home. Can you use this type of solution for that?
You can. The hardest part about that is the time zone. We are getting better at this because Teams natively is better at this, to reflect things at the user level and what they're in. But the person who's creating the schedule is sort of living in a time zone.
So if I'm a user, at least I could see in my time zone.
Yeah. So this is I won't call it a gap. It's on our roadmap to sort of light this up so that what you're wanting to do works just right. The reality is that it's almost like doing that, a meeting in Outlook, and it's like, well, where is this meeting? Like I'm working in Outlook. My Outlook calendar shows it to me in whatever time zone I'm in. And then now I'm creating a meeting, and I can say, oh, I'm actually in London then, so this is going to be 9 a.m. London time. So that type of capability is something we're definitely aware of. For those who do it today, someone just has to sort of map to that. The users can kind of see it in their time zone, so they'll be okay. The complexity is on the scheduler.
Thank you very much.
Bet.
So we have a requirement around if we have regional teams doing the same work, essentially. One regional team may be out doing a training, so the American team is going to be picking up all the overload. So can we put in a multi-day event that's not necessarily tied to an individual, but tied to the team?
So
it's kind of a notification that there's this other thing.
There's a few thoughts here. So one is that, and this will be probably a little closer to January when we finish this work, but I think of it like this. In January, you as an individual who's a worker or the manager, like we want everything reflected correctly. So you could be an individual who has shifts and meetings. That's the example I like to use. Or I have a shift, like I'm customer service and I have a shift, I'm working 9 to 5, but I have a customer meeting and then I have a meeting like with my work associates, and so these things get complicated. So like that thing could be a meeting that's like 4 days, inside of which people work in certain blocks of shifts. Well, then we also have shifts that you can make the shift as long if you want, and then we have activities inside of a shift, like I showed you with training, and I think the other example was like back register, front register, or something like that. Sure. You can get inside of a shift. So it's kind of like you got to figure out the right interaction model between like time and what each individual needs to know. But in Teams, we're going to get more and more sophisticated here because we're lighting up capabilities to allow you as a worker to work in multiple locations. And so I need to reflect that you're on different teams at different times doing different things into kind of one master view. And so I think that work will make what you're trying to do much easier.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the questions, and have a great rest of the show. Thanks.